Trade tensions between India and the US, it's been growing, certainly. But can talks in Delhi today make any difference? Take a look at some of the details, because the value of US-India trade has been booming in recent years. In fact, trade between these two nations last year hit a record high of just over $142 billion. But here's one of President Trump's issues. The US buys more from India than it sells to it. Tensions escalated last month when Trump said Prime Minister Narendra Modi's government wasn't providing reasonable access to its markets and withdrew its preferential trade status. India then responded with some pretty big tariffs. India's population of 1.3 billion is seen as, of course, a huge opportunity for growth for American companies such as, we've got Amazon, Netflix and Walmart, who have all been trying to invest heavily in that country. Now, despite growing 6.8% last year, India's economy, it has slowed. And the government knows that foreign investment can help pick it up. And in last week, we talked about it, last week's budget, Delhi announced it wants to open up its economy to foreigners and to foreign investment, foreign companies, so it can hopefully get that boost that it needs. Let's get rid of the screen. Mark Linscott is a consultant with the Asia Group, but I've got to tell you this, up until December, he was one of the most senior figures in the US government when it comes to trade policy with India. He joins us from Washington. Hey, Mark, great to see see what happens, Mark? You leave the job and everything falls to shambles. No, listen, I want you to explain briefly to our viewers around the world, how did, it was a booming trade relationship. How did it get to this state?
Well, thanks, Aaron. It's a real pleasure to be here. First, I want to point out that there have always been trade irritants, so that's not new. Some go to the World Trade Organization, some get resolved through consultations between countries, some fester, and they can fester for years. What's different about this situation is that the U.S. administration felt that certain priority issues raised questions about whether India continues to qualify for preferential tariffs reserved for developing countries. This is the GSP program. And the U.S. administration insisted that India fix these problems in order to maintain its tariff preferences under this program. Now, this isn't entirely precedented. There are situations in the past in which a developed country has withdrawn tariff preferences for a developing country. In fact, several years ago, Canada graduated India from its GSP program.
Okay, can I ask you this just briefly? What might some kind of deal look like to ease these current tensions?
Well, I think the U.S. side would like to fix current priority issues. For example, market access for medical devices and dairy products. I think they would also like to address some of the concerns regarding recent Indian restrictions on tech companies processing data cross-border, storing that data cross-border. On the Indian side, it would like the U.S. to lift its tariffs on steel and aluminum and reinstate GSP benefits. I can see prospects for this kind of deal coming together. Frankly, it wouldn't be a huge deal in covering all issues, but it would be an important move in terms of potentially avoiding a bigger trade conflict down the road.
And Mark, just briefly, and please, yeah, very briefly if possible, I kind of mentioned it. Look, at the end of the day, the US or Washington can talk tough and act tough, but at the end of the day, 1.3 billion people, it's a huge market and it can't be ignored.
You're absolutely right. It's important, it's hugely important for that very reason. India is the 6th largest economy in the world. Prime Minister Modi, recently re-elected, has pledged to build that to the 3rd largest economy in the world by 2024 in the next 5 years. U.S. companies cannot ignore India, and they aren't.
Okay. Mark Linscott, we really appreciate your time. Short and sweet, but thank you so much for joining us live from Washington. Okay.